You're live.
Okay. All right, good evening. Welcome to the special meeting of the Board of Education of the Moore Park Unified School District via teleconference, Tuesday, September 8th, 2020 at 4 p.m., 5297 Maureen Lane, most of us remotely. This meeting will be held via teleconference in accordance with Governor Newsom's Executive Order N2520 and the Ventura County Public Health Stay-at-Home Order. Members of the public have the right to observe the meeting using the link provided on the notice of teleconference meeting that was posted on September 4th, 2020. Aurelia, will you call the roll, please?
I'll go ahead and call the roll.
Okay.
Scott Totori,
Here.
Jeff Donabedian,
Here.
Robert Perez,
Here.
Nathan Sweet,
Here.
Ute Van Dam.
Present.
Okay, item number 2 is the Pledge of Allegiance. You'll all stand, place your right hand over your heart. Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance
I pledge allegiance
to the flag
to the flag
of the United
of the
States of
United
America
States of America
and to the republic
to the
for which
republic
it
for which it
stands,
stands,
one nation,
one nation,
under God,
under God,
indivisible, with liberty and justice
liberty
for all.
and justice for all.
Okay, thank you. Item number 3 is reordering and approval of the agenda. Dr. Hayes, do we have anything to reorder?
We do not.
Okay, I'll accept the motion.
Make a motion that we approve the agenda as is.
I'll second.
A motion from Robert Perez, second by Scott Totori. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion carries 5-0. Item number 4, public comment. In accordance with the Ventura County Public Health Stay-at-Home Order regarding the COVID-19 virus, members of the public may submit their comments concerning only the items noted on this special agenda electronically to the board secretary at ahernandez@mrpk.org prior to 3 p.m. on the day of the meeting, which is September 8th, 2020. Board members will review these written comments prior to the board meeting. And we do have some public comments. I believe Aurelia and Ute are going to read them for us tonight. Aurelia?
Okay, I will begin. And the first one is from Amy Adams, and it says, as a parent of a 3rd grader at Campus Canyon and a 6th grader at Mesa Verde, it is my sincere hope that the district will apply for the waiver so that children in grades TK through 6 can go back to school in person. Thank you. Okay. The second one is from Wendy Marcus. My name is Wendy Marcus, and I have 3 children in this district. My oldest, who has Asperger's, goes to Mesa in 8th grade. My middle, who has sensory processing issues and receives speech therapy, is in 4th grade at Flory. My youngest just started kindergarten at Flory. To say virtual learning has been difficult for my family is a massive understatement. 2 of my children have special needs, and both my husband and I work. But last spring, I was willing to concede some of the benefits of school to help with the containment of the virus. The benefits of foregoing in-person school this fall, however, have been vastly outweighed by the harm these children are suffering by not being physically in school. My oldest is suffering from depression. My middle has gained weight and is overly anxious. Despite the best efforts from teachers, it is patently clear after 2 weeks that not much learning is happening. So much of school is not just academic, but learning how to learn, how to emotionally regulate, how to organize, and how to react socially. Not to mention all of the academic lessons that really need to be in person, from hearing the student speak to making sure the student is writing correctly. None of these can effectively be done on the computer. The effects of this go far beyond my own children. We are effectively killing an entire generation of children, mentally, physically, and emotionally. I do not believe that COVID is not serious, but it does not warrant the level of harm that we are inflicting by not being in school. As someone that works with school districts and their legal departments, I have long believed that one of the primary barriers to opening up schools has been liability. I had hoped the California legislature would close that loophole, but they have not. So now our district must make the choice on their own. Let teachers and students who wish to return to school full-time sign waivers and give those that are high risk or have other mitigating issues the option to continue distance learning. At the very least, give us a real choice. Our children deserve better than this. Thank you. The next one is from Whitney Erickson. Dear MUSD School Board, I have a second grader, kindergartner, and preschooler at Flory, as well as a new baby at home. I am writing to urge you to apply for the K-6 waiver as well as express some of my concerns with distance learning. First, I have noticed that my second grader's curriculum consists of reading, writing, and math. When did science and social studies become optional? Where is the accountability of the school district in providing a thorough education to my child? Second, the preschool program is attempting to have classes via distance learning. I do not believe this is developmentally appropriate. Preschoolers need to be in the classroom and not on a screen. Why is it that children can attend Rainbow Preschool not 1 block away, but my child cannot attend the state preschool program? Lastly, the CDC is advocating for students to return to in-classroom learning. Schools play a critical role in supporting the whole child, not just their academic achievement. In addition to the structure for learning, schools provide a stable and secure environment for developing social skills and peer relationships. Social interaction at school among children in grades PK through 12 is particularly important for the development of language, communication, social, emotional, and interpersonal skills. Extended school closures are harmful to children's development of social and emotional skills. The Center for Disease Control 2020. Back in March, my daughter was a normal, happy child who loved school and performed well in the classroom. In April, when school closures were made long-term, she began suffering from anxiety and waking as many as 10 times every night crying. We have had multiple visits to a pediatrician who says he is seeing this more and more in children due to school closures. She continues to have sleep issues, which are interfering with her ability to learn during the day. Children need the emotional benefits from school in addition to the academics, especially when playgrounds, pools, and other resources are closed. Our children are paying the price, and I worry about the long-term effects. The CDC, Governor Newsom, and Dr. Levin are providing a way for K-6 students to get the support they need in the classroom. Please vote yes, submit the waiver, and support the well-being of Moorpark children. Thank you. The next one is from Sabrina Johnson. Hello, Moorpark School District. I appreciate that you have given an option for virtual or blended learning once we are off the watch list. As a working mom of 2 and a child that is struggling in 1st grade, I encourage you to consider opening up the blended learning as soon as possible. I know that there's probably a chance that schools will close again in the future, but would love for the teachers to physically meet my kids, see what level my children are at and what areas they need to work on. If schools close again, the teachers will have a better sense of how to help each individual student or where they need to change the teaching methods. I have been impressed how the virtual learning has changed since the spring, and my kids love the online teaching. Unfortunately, a lot of the students are distracted with toys, siblings, or eating during class, which is distracting to the whole class and detrimental to learning. Please consider reopening the elementary classes and cohorts to help our younger learners progress. Thank you. Okay. The next one is from Chrissy Ellison. There has been a lot of talk throughout this whole COVID thing about essential workers. Well, children's education is essential, and teachers should be considered as essential workers. So far, my kids' teachers are doing a great job with distance learning, but my kids are struggling. This type of learning is detrimental to their growth and their education. They need to be in school. Learning over the computer is not ideal. This is also causing a tremendous amount of stress for our family. Our kids cry because they miss school, they miss their friends, they don't understand everything that is being asked of them via the computer. They cannot always communicate to their teachers that they need help. A lot is also falling on me to make up for what they are missing from being in class. I am not a teacher. I am not capable of being the teacher. The stress this is causing me is tremendous. Thank you for taking the time to read my comments. This next one is from Joey and Corinne Casillas. As parents, we want to make sure that the essential needs of our children are met. Nearly 6 months ago, our children's lives were cut off immediately, not gradually, as they were not able to return to school or sports. What was supposed to be 2 weeks to flatten the curves has turned into months of distance learning. No hands-on learning and no social interaction for our children. Education is essential. According to the American Academy of Pediatrics, children should not have more than 2 hours in front of a screen. As you know, they are now at minimum of 2.5 hours straight plus individual work. We have dealt with our children having headaches, meltdowns, crying, anxiety, aggression, and depression due to this. This is not okay. My single parent friends have it even worse. They are trying to work and monitor this and causing stress on every family I have spoken to. This is This is causing irreparable damage to children and relationships. Many preschools, YMCA, gymnasiums, and centers have opened up. And many of us, myself included, have had more than one child. We have 3. If they can be open with precautions and cleaning more and taking care to make sure the students are safe with temperature checks, etc., there is zero reason our children can't get the American education that they so deserve and we all received. There is no substitute for peer interaction, in-person peer development, and well-being in mental and physical health. And nearly every parent and expert agrees. With unemployment being at an all-time high and having our children at home, we're running out of options and it's creating problems. Our family has gotten laid off due to COVID, and yet are putting the few activities that are available for our children on credit cards just for their well-being. Why are paid activities in campus and camps accepted and have been successful for months? Lastly, if it is mandatory, we are only okay with masks during passing, coming and going. Once in the classroom, it is essential for the children to be unmasked, unmuzzled for communication and expression. This is also something most camps have enforced. Teachers wearing them and children are not, and they have been successful. Going overboard with masks all day and zero interaction in person is also not a solution to the mental health crisis, and the children can see no facial expressions of their peers nor understand one another. Please understand we are sending this with the most respect and appreciation for all your hard work and are asking for your help for the future, for our future generation. We realize this is not easy on you either. We are requesting your help for submitting the waiver for K6. Thank you so much for everything. Sincerely, extremely concerned parents of our community. This next one is from Kylie Barker. My child is in kindergarten at Flory, and she is really missing out on so many of the joys of school. Her desire to go to school is decreasing drastically when she was so excited before the year started. She has 2 little brothers, 3 and 1, who are very distracting, and I fear that she is not learning enough and is falling behind. Our home is not big enough for her to do school in private, so she is just at the kitchen table. I do not have enough time in the day to give her school all of the attention it needs, and she is really struggling to learn new things. We are really hoping that our school district can apply for the waivers to go back to school early. I know everyone is scared of getting sick, but at this point, I feel that emotionally and academically, she is being hurt a lot more, and the risk of her age is so low. Please consider all of the young kids when you make this decision. They need to be social and to learn to be independent on their own at school, and I know it would greatly benefit my daughter and my family. Thank you. This next one is from Emily Hodges. I would like to encourage you to approve Moore Park School District to apply for the waiver to open our schools for our district to TK through 6th grade through the Ventura County Public Health Department. As a leader in the school district, it is important for you to consider the full spectrum of benefits and risks of both in-person and virtual learning options. The CDC, AAP, and Dr. Levin, our county's public health officer, all say that the risks of not being in school right now far outweigh the risks of being in school with the possibility of COVID transmission. Extended school closure is extremely harmful to children's intellectual, social, emotional, and physical well-being. In the CDC statement they released in July, they said extended school closure is harmful to children. It can lead to severe learning loss, and the need for in-person instruction is particularly important for students with heightened behavioral needs. Extended school closures are harmful to children's development of social and emotional skills. Important social interaction that facilitate the development of critical social and emotional skills are greatly curtailed or limited when students are not physically in school. Additionally, extended closures can be harmful to children's mental health and can increase the likelihood that children engage in unhealthy behaviors. Extended school closures deprive children who live in unsafe homes and neighborhoods of an important layer of protection from neglect, as well as physical, sexual, and emotional maltreatment and abuse. When schools are closed, children lose access to important opportunities for physical activity. The loss of opportunities for physical activity from school closures, especially when coupled with potentially diminished nutrition, can be particularly harmful to children. The American Academy of Pediatrics made this statement in July. We recognize that children learn best when physically present in the classroom, but children get much more than academics at school. They also learn social and emotional skills at school, get healthy meals and exercise, mental health support, and other services that cannot easily replicate online. Schools also play a critical role in addressing racial and social inequity. Our nation's response to COVID-19 has laid bare inequities and consequences for children that must be addressed. This pandemic is especially hard on families who rely on school lunches, have children with disabilities, or lack access to internet or healthcare. Returning to school is important for the healthy development and well-being of our children. The AAP also said we should leave it to the health experts to tell us when the time is best to open up school buildings and listen to educators and administrators to shape how we do it. So what is our local health expert saying? Dr. Robert Levin, Ventura County Public Health Officer, said, I recognize that there are reasons not to open our health department to request for waivers, but we got to the point where I feel the benefits outweigh the risks. Research shows that our youngest children derive significant benefits from in-person interaction with their teachers and with one another in the school setting. We will ensure that schools have a solid plan in place to protect their students and staff, and they will work with the health department when there is a case to prevent further spread of the virus. I feel that children K through grade 6 can receive education in a manner that is both rewarding and safe. The CDC also explains how low the risk of COVID-19 transmission is for the children. Scientific studies suggest that COVID-19 transmission among children in schools may be low. International studies that have assessed how readily COVID-19 spreads in schools also reveal low rates of transmission when community transmission is low. Based on the current data, the rate of infection among younger school children and from students to teachers has been low, especially if proper precautions are followed. There have also been few reports of children being the primary source of COVID-19 transmission among family members. This is consistent with data from both virus and antibody testing, suggesting that children are not the primary derivers of COVID-19 spread in schools or in the community. No studies are conclusive, but the available evidence provides reason to believe that in-person schooling is in the best interest of students, particularly in the context of appropriate mitigation measures similar to those implemented at essential workplaces. I hope along with these experts that you too can see that keeping schools closed is far more harmful for our children. The CDC continues, schools are an important part of the infrastructure of our communities as they provide safe, supportive learning environments for children, employ teachers and other staff, and enable parents, guardians, and caregivers to work. Schools also provide critical services to help meet the needs of children and families, especially those who are disadvantaged, through supporting the development of social and emotional skills, creating a safe environment for learning, identifying and addressing neglect and abuse, fulfilling nutritional needs, and facilitating physical activity. School closure disrupts the delivery of in-person instruction and critical services to children and families, which has negative individual and societal ramifications. On a personal note, I have 3 children in the school district, 8th, 5th, and 2nd grades. They have amazing teachers who genuinely love the kids and want to be in person teaching them. Last week was especially difficult for even the teachers to get through a lesson because the internet kept cutting out. It is extremely frustrating for these kids to have their screens freeze multiple times a day and difficult for real learning to take place. These kids and teachers need to be learning and teaching in person. Finally, for those parents and teachers who still are not comfortable with participating in-person school, the district can still allow the option for virtual learning. Sincerely, Emily and Ryan Hodges. This next one is from Garrett and Leah Jacobson. Please submit a waiver to begin in-person school in Moore Park grades K through 5th. We believe in-person school is necessary for students' academic success and good for emotional and social development. Distance learning is not a good substitute for in-person school. Thank you. This next one is from Heather McGregor, Moore Park Unified School District President and Board. Please start the process to obtain a waiver for grades K through 6 to go back to in-person school. The current learning online is not working for the majority of parents and children. I believe that the current learning environment is detrimental to children and their long-term success. Please put the children first and put them back in the classroom. I think that the benefits of classroom teaching outweigh the risks associated with the coronavirus. Thank you for your time. This next one is from Chris Barrett. Dr. Hayes and members of the board, my understanding is that you will be voting next week to submit a waiver for in-person learning. As many of you know, my wife and I both work full-time. We have twins in 1st grade and are currently sending them to the 4-hour base camp through the city. They were at Camp Moore Park all summer. It was very difficult to juggle all things going right now. And worst of all, I feel like my kids are missing out on so much learning opportunity. I know there are concerns with in-person learning, but I don't see it as a higher risk than camp, but it would make a huge impact on their ability to learn. I would encourage your support of this return to classroom and before/after school care that my family relies on. Thank you for your consideration. This next one is from Laura Layton. I am a mother of four children in MUSD. We are not thriving with distance learning. Please know that our family would like to support a waiver for in-person school. Thank you. This next one is from Leah Jacobson, to whom it may concern. Please submit a waiver to begin in-person school in Moore Park grades K-5. We believe in-person school is necessary for students' academic success and good for emotional and social development. Distance learning is not a good substitute for in-person school. And then this next one is from Summer Heathcote. Hello, my name is Summer Heathcote, and I have two children who attend school in MUSD, one of which is special needs kindergartner. It's not possible for my autistic son to do online learning, so he hasn't attended school since March. I would very much like the school district to seek the waiver to allow in-person learning. My son needs his programs. Thank you. And the last one I have is from Cynthia Rasmussen, to whom it may concern. Please submit a waiver to reopen the schools. My kids, 4th, 6th, and 11th grades, need to be in class with other kids, not stuck on a computer. They need to be taught by their teachers in person. There are too many issues with distance learning. Please reopen our schools. Thank you. Okay. Those are the only ones I have, Nathan.
Okay, thank you. And the other half is, who's going to read those?
Yeah, I'll
Yes.
read those. And I have quite a few of them, and some of them are very lengthy, so I will read quite quickly. Doesn't mean that they're any less important. It's just for the benefit of the public and for us to try to get through as many as we can. All right, this one's from Sherry Anderson. Hi, my name is Sherry Anderson. I have 4 children in Moore Park Schools, 3 at Peach and 1 at Mesa. I'm writing to urge our district to apply for the waiver to bring our kids back to school. I work in healthcare and understand being cautious surrounding this virus, but even the American Academy of Pediatrics has urged schools to do all they can to reopen to provide for the social and intellectual health of our children. We have cowered long enough, and it's time for us to take steps to reopen safely. I believe there are many ways our schools could create safe environments for our kids and learn at school, including social distancing and even considering outdoor learning environment options when possible. Distance learning situation has been and continues to be a serious challenge for our family. It is not a healthy learning situation, especially for younger students. My youngest is TK, and despite the extraordinary efforts of his wonderful teacher, it's just not a good situation. He needs a classroom experience. There is no substitute for in-person interaction, especially for these elementary age kids. Added to what is best for our kids is the stress of being placed on the working parent. I work part-time. I'm struggling to find a way to meet the needs of my kids and my work. Do you know that the going rate for a nanny in our area is $25 to $30 an hour? That's not even trying to narrow down the nanny who I'd feel confident to help my kids through their distance learning. How is that sustainable? It's not. My other option are daycare of some kind, but the cost is also shocking given that I have 4 children, and how are the risks of that any lower than if we were in school? And nothing is more frustrating to me than at this time than the fact that I can pay for my kids to go to their school for daycare if that means if I had the means, but school cannot find a way to open for public schooling. If the school closure is because of safety, why is it okay for paid daycare to be taking place at our schools and rec centers? Also, why are the private schools able to meet the standards to open and our public schools can't? This entire situation is not only serving to widen the divide between the haves and the have-nots in our society. If you can pay $1,000 each month, your child can continue to receive quality education. If not, good luck piecing together online instruction and trying to give your kids meaningful educational opportunities, because you are on your own. And if you don't have a parent staying home full-time, you're really out of luck. In conclusion, I urge you to reopen our schools, apply for the waiver, and give families that want their kids in school an opportunity to do that, and the ones that don't can stay home. I'm confident that our school district can provide a safe environment for our kids to learn in these unprecedented times. I have the deepest respect and sympathy for the challenges you face, and I appreciate the hard work our district is putting in to create the best possible solutions. Thank you for your time. Sherry Anderson, mom of Ethan, Avery, Graham, and Brady. This one's from Mindy Hunter. I'm emailing you to voice my opinion that I think our kids need to be back in the classroom. I know the teachers are really trying hard, but the kids are suffering in this format. My concerns are especially great for the young students who need in-person hands-on learning format for learning. If I had a child in kindergarten or first grade, I would pull them out for sure. Even my 7th grader is as we speak in tears over the frustration of trying to follow the class as they move platforms. In-person school should be considered an essential service by government, and the kids should get back to class and learn as soon as possible. I have 3 kids currently in the district and will most likely opt for homeschooling if things stay the same. Sincerely, Mindy Hunter. This one's from Jamie Benson. Please let the kids go back to school. I would love my kids back at school with the teacher, friends, and all the other good things that comes with being at school. Parent of Kate, Mesa 7th grader, Davis, Mesa 6th, Brett, 3rd grade at Mount Meadows. This is from Tracy and John Wymouth, and it says, Tracy and John Wymouth want our kids back in school. The next one is from Todd Layton. I'm writing to express my vote towards a waiver program to get our big kids back to in-person learning. This one's from Beverly DeCunha. Hello, I'd like to have my kids back in school. Mount Meadows, William Fernandez and Alexander Fernandez. Thank you. This one's from Carmi McKay. Hello, Ms. Hernandez. My understanding is that if I emailed you, my comments will be read today at the school board meeting. Is this correct? Yes, Carmi, it's correct. My name is Carmi McKay. I have 3 children in the Moore Park Unified School District. My children are in 2nd, 6th, and 7th grades. Distance learning has been a big struggle for our family. I would like to ask MUSD to apply for the waiver for all students to be able to go back to learning in the classroom as soon as possible. I'd like to share with you some of our concerns with distance learning. We have had many connectivity issues with technology. Often my children have a hard time hearing their teachers. We've had many problems with computers glitching, and they often get kicked out of their Google Meets. A lot of missed learning opportunities leaves us all feeling frustrated, trying to figure out what they missed during these times and what they need to get in their schools, get their schoolwork done is very tough. My 6th and 7th graders are required to be online much of the day. Students being online this long is not healthy for them. It leaves them feeling very isolated and lonely. MUSD gave each student a MUSD issued Chromebook. We quickly realized that our children are being exposed to many inappropriate things on these devices. They can access TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, as well as many inappropriate things. It's a huge distraction to my children's education, as well as not age appropriate. It can be very harmful. I wrote an email to Mr. Roberts with MUSD Technology Department regarding questions that I have and have not heard back from him. With distance learning in place, the mental health and well-being of everyone in my home is struggling. Students need to be able to attend school where there's much better learning environment. At school, in the classroom, so many distractions are removed, allowing my children to focus on their learning. At home, we are a small space with multiple children where it's hard for them to focus on learning. We have a lot of technology connectivity issues and technology filtering issues. Please apply for the waiver so our children can get back to the classroom and have the best learning opportunities available to them. Thank you so much. This one is from Chris Fairbairn. To whom it may concern, please do whatever it takes to get the kids back at school as soon as possible. We have 2 children who attend Mount Meadows, and we already see the mental toll it has taken on our children to be home all day and not be surrounded with their peers. This one is from Philip Fernandez. Hello, I have 2 children that are enrolled in Mount Meadows Elementary School. We are anticipating that they would be going back to school shortly. I'm not sure why we are just now requesting a waiver. However, filling out the waiver now is better late than never. Please count myself as in favor of the waiver. This one's from Kim Holiday. As parent of a sixth grader who desperately needs the in-classroom instruction, please ask for the waiver for our kids to get back into the classroom. We can do it right and do it safe. It's not for everyone, I get that, but my daughter is a visual learner and in need of interaction with her teacher. Sitting in front of a computer all day has been really hard for her. She's a great student, but has already missed assignments because she just can't sit there any longer. Please get our kids back to the classroom. Thank you. This one is from another one from Beverly DeCunha. This is her second one. Hello, I'm in favor of the waiver for TK through sixth grade elementary school. I have two children at Mount Meadows and would like to get a classroom environment as soon as possible, as it is available and safe to do so. This one is from Nicole Lukingay. Dear Dr. Hayes and school board members, we have 4 children in your district doing distance learning right now. We applaud the efforts of your teachers and principals. I think everyone agrees that distance learning is a very poor substitute for in-person school. Just want to share what our kids' experience with distance learning has been. Our Chromebooks continually drop them from Google Meets and the screen freezes. It often happens when the teachers are giving assignments and instruction, which stresses out my kids because they miss important information. The problem is not our home internet because all other computers in the home are working at the same time. Critical information is constantly lost, making it hard for them to learn. Headaches. Headaches are becoming a constant problem in spite of wearing adaptive eyeglass lenses. Bloodshot eyes, increased irritability, feelings of listlessness, getting distracted and losing track of deadlines, losing motivation to learn. I spoke with the Office of Ventura County Superintendent of Schools to get a better understanding of the stipulations for the reopening of waivers for K through 6. They're very helpful in educating me on this according to the county office. The specifics of how the waiver is written and what Moorpark applies for in the waiver is determined by Moorpark School District administrators. In other words, Moorpark has a lot of control over what reopening for K-6 looks like and how many K-6 schools they reopen right now when applying for the waiver. Furthermore, the county official told me that a parent input needs to be taken into account when making these decisions. I hope Moorpark leads other districts in progressive attempt to restore our children to their educational environment they deserve. The social, emotional, and intellectual well-being of my kids is very important to me. I'd prefer to keep my kids in MUSD, but if kids are going to do school at home, I would rather teach them myself and spare them the hours on electronics that bring so many negative consequences. 2 of my kids spend 6 to 8 hours on their electronics for school every day. I hope MUSD takes into consideration parents' concerns with distance learning and offers an opportunity for the kids who want to return to school. This one is from Michael Rosenblum. To our Moorpark Unified Board, before I begin, I want to thank you for all your hard work and careful consideration during this time. It's an impossible position to be in, and your handling of the situation is to be highly commended. It cannot be easy choosing the correct course, knowing whatever decision you make, will always be those who will passionately disagree, especially when the stakes are so high. With that in mind, I'm pleading with you to continue the distance learning model as currently constructed. I do not use the word pleading lightly. It may seem dramatic, but as this is a literal matter about the health and safety of our students, teachers, and faculty, I feel that the word is appropriate. Many of you know me personally and know that I am an upbeat, well-measured person, but I am terrified by the thought of schools opening too soon. That fear is heightened by the fact that many of the arguments to open schools are based on either outdated information about COVID transmission or politically motivated, or at the very least, politically tainted information. I'm sure you'll be receiving numerous emails from parents today with endless facts, figures, and cited resources that would make any teacher proud, attempting to sway your decision. I do not want to inundate you the same way. I will keep my point brief. Reports that children are not primary transmitters of the disease are outdated. This was originally the thought because not many children were contracting the disease. However, much of that was due on how swiftly we reacted to closing schools and making sure our children were not exposed in the first place. When schools and states that were not practicing distance learning opened up, students contracted COVID on literally the first day. There have been countless reports of children catching and spreading the disease. This has not only put them in jeopardy, but their families as well. Any recommendations made by the CDC right now needs to be taken with a heaping grain of salt. My own political beliefs aside, we are in an election year, and unfortunately, there's our government and agencies acting in a political fashion that have never operated that way in the past. I acknowledge this is a big reason why these decisions have come so hard to make for school boards and other organizations. Everything is seen through a political lens. Even your decision has zero to do with politics. There are those that will scream that you have a political agenda. It is one of the great tragedies of this entire pandemic. The simple matters of health have become so heavily politicized. I've seen many arguments from parents saying that we should consult the educators, even going so far to put words in teachers' mouth. They want to teach in person, quote. I am in a unique position of being both a parent of a student in the district and whose spouse is a teacher in the district. I have no doubt my wife would love to be teaching in her classroom, but not during these current conditions. We are in the middle of a once in a century pandemic that puts lives and livelihoods at risk, and we are rushing back to get to normal despite having very little control or even understanding of the disease. And before we go asking our incredible teachers to return to less than safe environments, we should at the very least give them the opportunity to determine their comfort level without fear of job reprisal. I will end with this. We are reading each day how scientists are getting closer and closer to receiving full approval on the number of different vaccines. It's getting a little long. With different vaccines that will hopefully return to society slowly but surely back to normal. Some reports even have those vaccines coming out in the next 2 to 3 months. Knowing how close we are to a potential light at the end of the tunnel, why are we rushing to send everyone back? I realize that our situation is not ideal. In fact, it's awful. I hate being constantly stuck at home, unable to see friends and do the things I love to do with my family. But we do it because it is the safe and the right thing to do for our family, our friends, and our community. No matter how much we hate having to do it, in my opinion, it would be short-sighted at best and dangerous at worst to open schools back up simply because we don't like doing things this way. This is not about whether we like it or not. This is about making safe choices for our students, teachers, and staff. We are so close to potentially finding our way out of this awful time. With such promising scientific developments, please make the prudent decision to keep our current system in place, ensuring the well-being of all. Allow for these promising vaccines to begin their rollout before we act rashly and open our schools. A few more months of less than ideal situations are far better than the potentially devastating and life-threatening effects of opening too soon. Thank you for all you do for our amazing community. This is from Michael Penrod. My name is Michael Penrod, and I'd like for the board to seek a waiver to begin in-person teaching. Kids are not benefiting from being taught over the internet via Google Meet. Kids are able to obtain learning through that process, but are lacking social skills that allow them with everyday interactions in life. It has been six months since they have been in the classroom setting, and we do not want to have a generation lacking social and educational needs. Thanks. And the last one from Jess Garcia. Dear school board members, I hope you and your families are all doing well during these crazy times. I know teachers and school staff have been working so hard to make this year extra special. I appreciate it so much. I have 2 children that attend Awala and love it, but we need the schools to open. I'm writing because our schools in Moorpark need to open. My children desperately need in-person direction to be successful. They thrive in the classroom and love school, but with distance learning, it's confusion, frustration, and they are no longer enjoying school. They are having meltdowns and crying fits over not understanding instructions or feeling like they aren't completely what's expected of them. Independent learning takes hours. They don't want to concentrate or try. I feel bad for my children. Are they even learning? How can I support them or set them up for success? They need to be at school at a normal routine. Times are so uncertain and distance learning is making it so much worse. My children love their teachers and their performance is no reflection of them. They are doing their absolute best. We can safely learn at school, so please open them back up. Our kids deserve to live, learn, and play. They can't do any of that with closed sports, closed parks, closed facilities, and more. Don't take school away from them too. I'm begging you. Done.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Ute. Thank you, O'Reilly, and thank you for everybody who wrote in to comment about, to weigh in on the reopening or the waiver. Moving on to item number 5, the discussion is on the school reopening. Superintendent Hayes is requesting board discussion regarding the potential of reopening the schools, including small group cohorts, specialized instruction, waivers, and when Ventura County is off the state monitoring list, the blended learning reopening model. Staff will make brief presentations regarding each topic. Any action taken will be at the discretion of the board. Dr. Hayes.
Yes, thank you. Tonight, I am going to ask our Director of Maintenance and Operations, Denise Barrington, to present an overview of our cleaning plan for COVID-19 and some of the modifications that we have made. This item is not up for a board action per se, but I thought it would be important as part of the discussion to show our preparedness. Denise?
All right, thank you, Dr. Hayes. So as we return to in-person instruction, the Maintenance and Operations Department has a comprehensive plan for cleaning and disinfecting to keep our students and staff safe. The second slide summarizes our cleaning practices. First and foremost, all of the custodial staff have been trained in disinfection procedures. This includes training about COVID-19, how the disease spreads, and pandemic cleaning procedures. The custodial staff is using Clorox Healthcare hydrogen peroxide disinfectant, which is EPA registered for use against COVID-19. This disinfectant kills most viruses in 1 minute or less and kills a virus which causes COVID-19 in 30 seconds. What this means for us is the surface only needs to remain wet for 30 seconds for it to be properly disinfected. All high-touch surfaces in classrooms, such as door handles, pencil sharpeners, tables, desks, chairs, and light switches, will be disinfected between cohorts and thoroughly cleaned and disinfected nightly. All high-touch restroom surfaces will be disinfected at least 3 times daily and thoroughly cleaned and disinfected nightly. And as a reminder, all employees are asked to pass a screen at home and perform a wellness check immediately upon entering any MUSD campus. This next slide is a breakdown of the enhanced nightly cleaning routine that will be occurring each night. All areas will be thoroughly cleaned and disinfected in preparation for the return of cohort A in the morning. Slide number 4 presents a checks and balances for staffing to ensure that we are adequately disinfecting classrooms between cohorts. So for example, as you see here, Royal West has 21 classrooms they're going to utilize. At 5 minutes a classroom, it would take the current day custodian 105 minutes to complete that cleaning. So what this is telling us, we need 2 day staffs to adequately clean those classrooms between cohorts. So again, that's just a matrix on how we developed our staffing requirements. Slides 5 and 6 present how we have internally made adjustments to our custodial staffing matrix so that we can comply with the disinfecting guidelines. For instance, at the elementary level, we shifted an evening custodian to become a midday shift custodian, which has helped alleviate our staffing shortage. However, though, based on the figures noted, the custodial department is looking at the potential of 4 additional part-time employees to facilitate the midday cleaning routine between cohorts. We're currently working with CSCA and Human Resources to fulfill this need. And then the next 4 remaining slides provide a detailed breakdown of the day, midday, and evening custodian responsibilities. Next slide, Dave. There you go. It's a visual overview of cleaning, including the frequency that high-touch surfaces and restrooms are disinfected. Our custodial supervisor, Jesus Mesa Morales, is working on a detailed schedule per school and custodian so that each route is customized to ensure that all areas are being cleaned properly each night. So I just wanted to present this to you so that you would get an overall view of what we're doing in the custodial department to ensure that staff and students are safe once they return to in-person learning. Are there any questions regarding cleaning?
I'd like to thank you for all this wonderful information. Obviously, it took a lot of time and thought to come up with these schedules. Just want to know if this is on the website for parents to go through in detail.
Yes, it is.
Thank you.
Mr. Donabedian, you had a
It's,
question?
For Denise, I just have a quick question. So we need to have, is it 3 more or 4 more employees to meet our staffing needs for cleaning?
Currently, at the current classroom utilization rate, it would be 4 additional staff, part-time staff members.
Okay. Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
It's, the return to in-person instruction is that this is the blended learning. Okay.
Yes, this would be utilizing nearly all of our classrooms on the campuses.
We would. Okay. Anybody else have any questions?
And is this something that would be submitted if we were to submit the waivers? Would we have to submit this packet?
Yeah, it would be part of our submission, yes.
Thank you for the info. Appreciate it.
All right, thank you.
Yes, thank you very much. Anybody else?
Thank you.
Okay, Dr. Hayes.
Thank you. Okay, the next presentation, I'll wait for that to be presented. So I have the Director of Special Education and myself, we're going to present 2 in-person additional options. I'm going to start with doing an overview of the waiver option, and then Ms. Syed will talk about small cohorts and specialized instruction. So for the school waiver option, in August, the governor and the California Department of Public Health allowed for waivers in counties that are still on the state's watch list, which, as we know, continues to include Ventura County. And the waiver is applicable only for grades TK through 6. It would allow in-person schooling for those grade levels, provided conditions are met and an application is filed. A district superintendent is the person from the district to submit the application. And we would have if the board desired to do such, we would have to specify a date, and it would have to be at least 14 days in advance of our application going to the county. And then also one of the main requirements for a waiver is that staff must consult with employee associations. We have 2 in our district. We have the Classified Employee Association as well as the Teacher Association. And also we would consult with, and we would be required to consult with parent groups and community organizations if they were applicable to our school district, and also publish our reopening plans on the website. We have published our plans in terms of our safety plans and our COVID-19, which I'll get to in a moment, on our website. We would also, if I was given direction from the school board, we would basically create a survey, and we would reach all of the parents of the grade levels that would be applicable to the waiver, as well as a survey to our employee groups. More waiver requirements, and many of these we have because these are required with our blended learning plan, our in-person, which we have, and the board approved that earlier this year. Cleaning, disinfecting plan, we just shared that with you. Our small stable cohorts, we would, if we opened under the waiver plan, we would open under the blended learning plan for those grade levels. So we would adhere to that same plan, the AM and PM, and that allowed for our stable small physically distanced cohorts. Entrance, egress, and movement within the school. We have identified our entrance and egress. Movement within the school, we would be developing that once we know exactly which grade levels a waiver would apply. Health screening for students and staff, we have that in place. We have our health hygiene practices in place. The identification and tracing of contacts, that is contact tracing. We have 2 people in our district, myself and district nurse, who would be the contacts with the Ventura County Public Health should a student or a staff member test positive or show symptoms. We would contact people according to our plan. Physical distancing, we have staff training. We have been doing that. Family education, that would be on the website. We would reach out again to our parents. The testing of students and staff, that is one of the areas that we still are waiting for a little, a bit more direction from the county. I will go into that in a subsequent slide. And then triggers for switching to distance learning. We did state in our blended learning plan that elementary classrooms are considered close contacts as opposed to secondary classrooms. And so if, for example, a teacher or student did test positive, it's very likely that the entire class would need to be tested, even asymptomatic individuals, and then possibly switching to distance learning while we wait for the test results. And then communication plans, we would hone those in, and we have task force in place now to help with those communication plans. Next slide. Okay, so this is our COVID-19 mitigation plan. We presented this to the school board and received approval, if you will, to proceed with the elements of the plan. We submitted it to the county, and our final approval was given to the district on August 24th. Our COVID-19 school reopening plan is on our website if anyone would like to review that, but it is approved and ready to go. Next slide. As many of our public members know, we had the governor announced a new reopening framework and created 4 tiers. We are currently in Ventura County. We are in tier 1, meaning we have not reached the threshold of having 7 or less new cases per 100,000 to move to the red. If we move to the red, then at that time, we are able to open all of our schools because Ventura County would be removed from the watch list. So that is something, again, in a subsequent slide, we'll talk about action that the board may or may not decide to take this evening. But currently we are in the purple, meaning that we cannot open secondary schools at this time. Our option is to open up TK through 6 through a waiver process. Next slide. So this slide it's actually the 10.9 new COVID-19 cases. We are now down officially, it was just posted today, 7.8. And so we have to reach 7 or less to be removed from the watch list. So we will be looking very carefully over the next week. Next Tuesday should be the next update of the COVID-19 website. One thing to consider is the fact that we just came through Labor Day weekend. So some experts think that our numbers may increase, but we will wait to see next week. So there is a possibility, being at 7.8, that we could be removed from the watch list, and we would know that by next Tuesday, which we actually do have a board meeting next Tuesday. Okay, so these are some factors to consider about a waiver. One, we are still on the watch list, as I just mentioned. Waivers are a bit more challenging for unified school districts than elementary school districts because you do have you have teaching staff that would be, some teachers would be required to do in-person teaching, while other secondary teachers would not at this time under a waiver. So it's just something to consider when we consult with our bargaining units. The board, as well as myself and staff, would determine if we decided to apply for a waiver, the grade span. We could do all 7 grade levels, TK through 6, or could choose a a smaller number of grade levels to start and then expand at any time, we would have to submit an additional application if we wanted to expand grade levels later on, if, for example, we were not off the watch list in a timely fashion. We would have to determine a target date because that is part of the application process. Fine tuning the elementary reopening plan would be necessary if we in fact only had, let's just say, for example, 2 or 3 grade levels that we decided to have in-person learning, because we would need to recreate walking paths and such in bathrooms. And you know, we want to have everything down to which bathrooms students use, you know, staggering times for breaks, etc. And so if you don't have the entire elementary school and you have part of them, you know, just part of the grade levels, then we would need to reconfigure that, because our blended learning plan considers TK through 5 at all of our schools. And the COVID-19 testing requirements, at this time, testing is free at the county in Ventura, at the Ventura County Public Health Department. And there are some other areas that are there are no cost. But the issue with that, of course, would be, you know, there's longer waiting lines, and also the timeliness of getting back results. There's a correlation between having symptoms or not having symptoms, and so if it's a long period of waiting to get results, that particular class would possibly be on distance learning. So just important to note that testing is still a little bit, it's not as consistent and communicated to school districts as of yet. Rapid tests are about $150 a test for school districts, and that can be costly. So something just to consider. Private school versus public school waivers to date. In Ventura County, the last update that I received last week, we had, there were 17 private schools in Ventura County that applied for a waiver. And as of today, I was just notified that 11 have been approved, 11 of the 17. No public school districts in Ventura County or public charters have applied for a waiver to date. So that's remains to be seen if a district will do that. And cumbersome application and approval process. It's not necessarily a negative. It's just that there are many tiers to the application, including you have to submit evidence of your stakeholders and actually the data. So they do want to see what our association, what our employees, the percentage of employees that favor in-person teaching and working, and also same with the affected parents, the affected parent group. So we would create surveys and get that out and try to, and in fact, not try, but we would get timely results, and we could report that back to the board. And then that would, again, that is required to be part of the process. So I will, at the end of this presentation, we'll entertain questions from the board regarding waivers, and I can add in more information if needed. But right now I wanted to switch over and have Mrs. Syed, who is our special ed director, talk about small cohorts and the specialized program and that reopening plan.
Hello, and thank you for your time today. I'd like to discuss bringing back small cohorts for students with specialized needs. On August 25th, the California Department of Public Health issued guidance to allow for small cohorts of children to come back to school and receive specialized instruction. These services are intended for our most vulnerable students for targeted interventions, including specialized services and limited instruction. We would service students who have intellectual disability, students who fall on the autism spectrum, students who have significant health impairments and who require specialized services that cannot be provided through distance learning because of that child's unique and exceptional needs. In order to bring back our students with special needs, we don't require a waiver. We can really focus on very specific students. Of course, we'll be adhering to health and safety requirements, and we need to ensure that we're abiding by the small cohort definition. So that'll be the next slide. A cohort is a stable group of children with no more than 14 students in the group and no more than 2 supervising adults in the classroom. We cannot mix our cohorts. Many of our special day classes at our school sites have multiple classrooms. We cannot mix the students on campus or when transporting them from school into home. We can offer this program and specialized supports at the primary grade level. And we can additionally provide one-to-one paraeducator supports in the classroom as long as we don't exceed 16 persons in a classroom. We have to ensure that we have proper physical distancing, ensuring that our students and staff members are wearing their facial masks. We have to make sure that we're cleaning and that we're following all other safety measures. We have very specialized programs on multiple school sites. Over at our Early Childhood Education Center, we do have a mild to moderate learning disability classroom where we service kids who have learning disabilities. They might have health impairments. And we also have a visually structured classroom which provides applied behavioral services to students who have autism. So very defined programs. Over at Arroyo West, next slide, or previous slide. Over at Arroyo West Academy, we have one mild to moderate program that services kids grades 3 to 5. We have about 10 kids in that classroom. Flory Academy has our functional skills program that services K through 5 students who have intellectual disabilities. They might have medical disabilities or orthopedic impairments. And we have 2 classrooms there. Over at Mountain Meadows, we have autism programs that service kids in grades 3 or K through 5, excuse me. And again, we apply ABA techniques and they're visually structured programs. And last, at Peach Hill, we have two mild to moderate learning disability programs servicing grades K to 5. Next slide, please. If students are able to return to campus, we're able to offer individualized instructional services or a one-to-one para. We can offer speech and language services, potentially some occupational therapy, as well as physical therapy and adaptive physical education. We do have specialists who provide vision services and deaf and hard of hearing services as well. In order to be able to bring back small cohorts of students, we have to ensure our health and safety plan. We have to be flexible with the required public health orders. We have to ensure that we are focusing on positive student outcomes with academic and social emotional well-being. We have to make sure that we're addressing the learning gaps of our students. And the goal is to bring back our students to campus every day and ensuring that they're wearing their masks. We may have to consider providing childcare at some point. We do have to provide transportation to our students who are most vulnerable. And we'll be discussing how to provide child nutrition to each of our students on campuses. And again, ensuring that our students are bringing those Chromebooks that we have for them to school and home to ensure that they're accessing their curriculum. While we're reviewing our health and safety, we want to make sure that there's time built into the student schedules for regular hand washing. Each of our schools will have multiple thermometers in stock so that we can have temperature checks when students arrive to school. We want to make sure that we're following the social distancing guidelines in the classrooms and when students are coming into school and leaving school. We'll have a cleaning schedule and making sure that all of our staff on site are able to support with this as well. And we want to ensure that we have modified schedules and social distancing to be able to trace our contacts. Each special day classroom will have one district para assigned to that classroom. And in addition, we're going to have one-on-one support within the classroom to ensure that our students are able to wear their masks, to ensure that students are accessing their curriculum, and to support students with behavior or social emotional well-being in the program. The next steps for ensuring that we can bring back our students onto campus is that we would need to consult and collaborate with our labor partners. We would need to ensure that all of our staff have been provided and understand the safety protocols on campus. We also need to communicate with our families that we're able and ready to have students return onto campus. And our hope is to bring back our students as early as September 21st. Before I turn this presentation over to Dr. Hayes, I would like to let the board know that a majority of the districts in our county will be bringing back our most vulnerable students onto campus late September to early October. And I would like to ask the board if you have any questions about bringing back our most vulnerable students to school in small cohorts.
David, can you go to the previous slide, please? Thank you. So school board, if we could start with asking if you have any questions regarding small cohorts, which is designed for our most vulnerable students. And then after that, we can entertain any questions regarding the waiver, which is for regular ed students and other special education students that are not our most vulnerable special education students.
So we're talking about two different items here. We're talking about
Yes.
the waiver and the limited instruction.
Yes.
I was reading that LA is also doing something similar. They're going to be opening for their neediest students on September 14th, and they're targeting disabilities and English language learners to open. Is English language learners a part of this as well, or?
Our instructional services department is looking at how we can service our other populations, our other vulnerable populations in our district. At this point in time, we've developed a protocol to bring back students with special ed needs.
Okay. And then obviously, and I felt like the waiver kind of went into this, but I now understand there's different items, but it looks like, they're very similar. A cohort is, there will be a classroom with no more than 14 children and 2 supervising adults. Do we
That's
tend to
right.
have that many students in the class?
Yes, most of our special day classes range anywhere between 8 to 10 or 11 kids max. So we will most definitely be able to adhere to those guidelines.
I have a couple questions. So the maximum of children regardless is 14 and with 2 supervising adults. But if there's
That's
less than
correct.
14 students, then some of those students can have their one-on-one or have their designated instructional service like provider in the classroom with them as well.
That is correct. Yes.
And then is this for the special ed component that you've just presented? Is that for TK through 6 or is that TK through 12?
Preschool through 5th grade.
Through 5th grade, okay. Thank you.
Anyone else have any other questions?
Yeah, I have one question. First, Robert Newt, thank you for those questions. I had some help clarify some things for me too. If we, I guess, allow this small cohort to come on campus, can we have, if we do go forward with the waiver, our regular education and our most vulnerable special education students on campus at the same time right now, given the restrictions that we have, or we have that capability to do so, or capacity?
Yes, yes, we do. We have, because they would be, the waiver would be in the blended learning model because we have to adhere to physical safety, physical separation, the physical distancing. And these classes for our specialized instruction would also be very limited. So it would not impact our spacing.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you so much for your time today. I appreciate it.
Just one last thing. It talks about how the different school sites, Arroyo West, mild to moderate programs, and Mountain Meadows having autism programs. So are these students already enrolled in these programs at these particular schools, or would they have to move from their current school to the schools with these individual programs?
Our programs are currently at each site and students are receiving services through distance learning. However, based on their disability, they're unable to make progress towards their yearly goals based on their disability. But we would continue with programs as they are on each site.
So no students would have to change
Correct.
schools as part of that. Okay.
That's right.
Lilia, approximately how many students are we talking in total here?
In total, I would guess about 60 to 70 students in our SDC programs. And in addition to that, at some of our sites where we don't have special day classes necessarily, we could potentially bring back students to receive speech and language or OT services for those who are really struggling with the distance learning format.
Thank you.
And this would give you does this require 14 days?
Right, exactly. Our clinicians would not be able to service more than 14 kids on a campus, but that would be manageable.
No, I'm sorry, the 14 days, do you need a 14-day lead time on this also?
Yes, we do. We need to work with child nutrition department and the transportation department and get our protocols into place, as well as communicate with families to discuss childcare and all that good stuff.
There is no requirement for 14 days like the waiver. This is not a requirement. We just, as a staff, chose September 21st in order to consult with our teachers, our labor, as well as our families, because some families may choose to, even though we're offering this, they still, because of maybe underlying health conditions, for example, may choose to keep their students home with distance learning. So we wanted to first present to the board, get any feedback from the board, and then tomorrow we would begin preparing for the September 21st target date, if the board's comfortable with that.
Okay, so is this going to end up being
A question.
Yeah.
Would we be able to open both the special day classrooms and the small cohorts at the same time? Or would we need to stagger them? The opening?
Okay, well, the small cohorts and specialized instruction, that is the special day class, that's the vulnerable student component.
Correct.
The waivers are for regular ed students and other special education students. And yes, we could do both.
So we could potentially open them both up on the 21st. My understanding?
Yes. Potentially.
Yeah, okay.
The waivers, so the waiver portion, we're going to get into that, right? Next, is that?
Yes.
Okay.
As soon as we're done with this, we can dive into the waivers. Yes.
I have one quick question. You said between 60 and 70 students are in the special day class program. Is that from preschool through fifth?
That's correct.
Thank you.
So I guess the last thing, are we going to, since this is separate, are we going to want to do the same sending of the surveys and of parents and labor and our groups in order to get feedback on that? And do we need a separate motion and approval from the board?
I will go over the board options after we're done with discussion. But no, there are no waivers required for the small cohorts specialized instruction. There are no requirements. If there's recommendations for consulting and collaborating, obviously we want to consult and collaborate with our staff, before we would open up schools. It is not required for small cohorts and specialized instruction. It's recommended.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions, comments? Okay, Dr. Hayes, do you want to discuss the waiver?
Yes. Yeah. Previous slide, please. Back again, David. Thank you. So now I can answer any questions about waivers that the board may have. Just to recap, waivers are only allowed for the grade spans of transitional kindergarten up to and including sixth grade. They are not, they're not available for 7th through 12th grade. And there is a waiver application. And the waiver application, it's a minimum of 14 days when you submit it before you would hear back. So we would have to have a target date at least 14 days out. And there are requirements which I reviewed. And the one requirement that's very important is that you must demonstrate with evidence that you did consult with your stakeholders, including parents and staff members.
So Dr. Hayes, after listening to Lilia's presentation, between the waiver and her presentation, they seem very similar as to the concept of reopening. And it's, you know, again, no one knows why the government does anything, but I mean, I see them both as the same. What is the difference between the waivers and what we're doing without any permission in moving forward?
Well, I think the main difference, there isn't difference in terms of safety requirements. Anytime we have any kind of in-person learning, even right now, we are in the process of having our sports practices return. Any type of in-person interaction must adhere to the safety guidelines that have been established by the county and the state. Our plan has been approved for in-person learning. So our waiver would reflect our blended learning plan for those grade spans. So again, we have AM and PM cohorts, and those plans, our safety plans have been approved. But the main difference is that the small cohorts in specialized instruction do not need a waiver. Districts can go ahead and provide these specialized services because these are services that it has been determined that they cannot be done effectively in the home setting. So this is in order for the most vulnerable student populations to be able to make progress and meet goals. It's arguable, obviously, distance learning. I think we all agree that distance learning is not as effective as in-person learning. I don't think there's any argument at all about that. However, the fact that students can make progress is what I'm surmising, the fact that you still need a waiver to bring back students more in large scale, right? And so, but nonetheless, you have to maintain the physical distancing. So we still can only have anywhere from 12 to 14 students in a classroom at one time based on the size of the classroom. Now, in some cases, if the board would determine that they wanted to include upper, 4th, 5th, or 6th grade in the waiver, we can have, as long as space provides, we can have more students, but you have to have at least 6 feet between desks. And so most of our classrooms can only accommodate about 12 to 14 students per classroom. So the main difference is really one of maybe bureaucracy, if you will. I mean, the bringing back students via the waiver, we have to go through a process. We have to go through an application. We have to meet certain requirements that are over and above the safety requirements. Whereas the small cohorts, specialized instruction, we have to meet the safety requirements. So that's the difference.
And obviously, if the health department felt that we didn't meet the needs, they would tell us and we wouldn't be able to continue with the waiver. And you said that the waiver calls for basically our previous plan, which was 14 students in the classroom.
12 to 14, depending on the size. Mm-hmm.
And the other one for for Lilia's was 16?
Well, yeah, maximum adults in a room. Yes. And there's a few differences. I mean, the small cohorts, you cannot mix cohorts, whereas in the waiver, you can mix cohorts, but it needs to be, limited. So we could, for example, have a teacher have 2 separate cohorts in one day. That is actually not our elementary plan. Well, I mean, I'm sorry, it is our elementary plan because we have an AM PM. So our teacher, for example, if we go to just a quick review of our blended learning model, let's just say there's a classroom of 24 students, right? Typically 12 of them, and again, the numbers may vary a bit, but 12 of them, for example, would have the AM session, and then they would leave campus, and then the PM session of 12 kids would return in the afternoon. So that teacher would have that would actually be a definition of 2 cohorts. In the small cohort specialized plan with our most vulnerable students, that cannot be the case. It can only be 14 students per week, or 1 cohort. So, there are differences. And so I think it's a little bit more restrictive, if you will, with the small cohort specialized instruction because the kids are vulnerable with possible medical and physical disabilities.
And my last comment is, do you feel that the governor, I guess, picked K through 6 because obviously our 6th grade goes into middle school, but a lot of other schools, do they still have 6th grade in elementary? Is that possibly why those numbers were picked?
I think so. I think there are several like K through 6 or TK through 6 schools, and so I think that's why you very rarely get a TK through 7. So I think that he wanted to include every possible model, and I also think that the waivers are for the younger students because the younger students are less independent learners. Older students are more independent learners, and so again. I'm not stating that older kids don't need in-person learning because I think they do, but I think the waivers are again targeting if you had to define which students are more needy, younger students would. Most people would agree that younger students are again less independent and need more in-person teaching and instruction.
Well, in our case, I would say K through 5.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thanks.
You're welcome.
Any other questions or comments?
I have a few questions, and I also add on to Dr. Hayes' last comment about, and even Mr. Perez's comment about the classroom sizes too. We're restricted at that TK through 3rd grade level to really small classrooms. So it really helps elementary schools be able to break that down and keep those groups small when they go back on campus as compared to our secondary schools. I think that's why we see that target as well. Is that more or less true?
Yes, that's exactly. Yes, that is another reason.
I appreciate a lot of the input and I had wrote down some questions, but most of them have been addressed in some of the explanations here. But yeah, let's see here. With in regards to surveys, how long do we think that might take? How long is that process going to take, or what do you think?
That's a great question. First of all, I have an amazing team that I work with, and so pending board direction tonight, we would have our instructional team tomorrow. We could start and have a survey. I believe I do have Ms. Welch is on the line. On our meeting here. She's our assistant superintendent of curriculum instruction. But I believe it would be realistic for us to have a survey out to our families by the end of the day tomorrow. And I mean, I know that's ambitious, but the survey is not real complicated. It would be pretty simple. It would be ascertaining our targeted families, whether or not they would be willing to participate and bring their students back to in-person learning, because that would affect that could affect our decision if we had a more majority than we anticipate that would rather remain on distance learning. That would be something for us to consider, because it might change the way we deliver, because right now we've separated distance learning as much as possible from blended learning when we return. So if we had our blended learning model, but we had still students who rather would wait till we came off the watch list, for example, because there may be families that would rather wait, that could disrupt our plan. So, but I think what my goal would be is to have that out by the end of the day tomorrow, by 5 o'clock. and ask for our parents to return that to us this week, Thursday or Friday at the latest. And then we could tabulate the data and we could come back and report to the board. Next Tuesday, we happen to have a regular school board meeting. So we would report back the results. We could get final direction from the board, for example, and then proceed. With keeping the data in mind. And the same really goes to our employees, the employee associations. We could have a survey out to them by the end of the day tomorrow as well, and ask for the same reply to really get the data to us maybe by noon on Friday, maybe at the end of the day on Thursday. I'd want to talk to my team, but we could have a pretty quick turnaround.
Thank you for that. I really appreciate that. One other kind of question, or maybe it's more of a comment, because I think there's a lot of, I've had parents reach out to me and a lot of frustration on all ends, because, as we see, like you said, 17 private schools have submitted and 11 of them have been approved. And a lot of parents wonder, well, why haven't we done this sooner? Or why can't we do this sooner? And I know when I've talked to you before about this, and I just think it's important to get that info out there. One, I think we can all see that there's a lot of inconsistency at the different levels of government, causing more frustration by everybody. But I think you had a discussion with me that you were kind of being told before that Dr. Levin was looking at, just allowing like one school in each district to possibly open prior to this kind of more or less public pushback to get them to consider all of us. And I think that is important, that people understand this hasn't really been a big delay on our district side. But when we're being told they can only do, maybe one school in the district, that's really creates a lot of disparities for everybody and even further division. So I just wanted to kind of put that out there so people understand that you have been watching this, your team's been watching this. You've been keeping us up to date on any information. So just wanted to put that out there.
Well, I thank you. I appreciate that. Yes, originally the waiver was going to be more of a pilot waiver, and each district would choose one school possibly. And when we met as a county, because we are working with Ventura County of Education, of course, who oversees all the school districts in Ventura County in terms of rules and regulations, it was determined that would be a really difficult thing to choose one school in a school district to pilot. And so really we were waiting for more consistent information that would allow it to be applied uniformly and equitably through a district. So that's where we're at now. But yes, I appreciate that. But yes, there's a lot of bureaucracy, a lot of testing issues still. But I think that I'm confident we can overcome some of those. We have, like I said, we've been working really hard to address and answer the requirements as we've been moving along. So most of the requirements for a waiver have been met by staff, except, like I said, we do need to get we have to actually identify testing locations. So we will be, that would be something we would be looking at this week to send staff and students to get the most timely results. And we have to keep in mind that even though there are free facilities in Ventura, where the Ventura County Public Health Office is located, some of our families might have a hard time getting there. So we really need to have local testing that's, right here available for our families who may not have transportation. So we have to consider all those factors, and that's something we've been working on. And but again, the main to do on us would be to consult with our labor partners and with our parents. So as I said, we could turn that around fairly quickly.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate that.
So just about the testing. So the testing is not going to be handled by Moorpark Unified, but instead by the different testing facilities around Moorpark or in Ventura County.
Correct.
And the ones that are currently available are free to the public, but their turnaround time is how many days do we know? 7 to 10 or?
Yeah, I mean, it can take up to 2 weeks to get a test result. So if you're asymptomatic, so, you're not a priority, if you will. And I don't want to speak for every testing facility, but the ones I'm familiar with locally have taken much longer if the person getting tested does not show any symptoms. If you are showing symptoms, the turnover time is much much more rapid. But I can have, and we would have detailed information for you on Tuesday of next week or before. But that's something we have been working on, is gathering information about testing. It hasn't been as easy as it should be in terms of getting information from the public health office. I think that there's efforts made, and it's challenging. It's challenging.
And then as part of that, for Tuesday, if you could also talk about the criteria for when they would send a classroom home versus a school back to distance learning versus essentially returning the entire district back to distance learning also. I know there's criteria for that, and I don't know what it is off the top of my head, but if we could get that. And then if we end up with a student or a teacher, for that matter, that ends up positive, what the protocol for that would be. Whether, say, a teacher turns up positive, do we test every student, even if they're asymptomatic, and what that would look like? Do the kids automatically go back to distance learning, and the different procedures? It's obviously complicated, but if we're going to need to have all those protocols in place prior to returning at all. If we get a case day one, what do we do? So, okay. Anybody else have any questions or comments?
David, if you could go to the next slide. I outlined, there's a lot to consider. So I thought it would be helpful if I gave an outline of some possible options and considerations for the board. We have three different types of reopening models, if you will. The first one is the small cohort specialized instruction, and that is for our most vulnerable students. The board could choose to take action tonight or to approve staff for working towards a September 21 target date. And again, there are no requirements. We could have an earlier target date. This is just what we feel we need to be adequately prepared to have these students come back, or delay that target date and determine that target date, for example, next Tuesday, and maybe take action with all of them. So that would be, those are just some considerations for option number one. Number two, the waivers. There have been school boards that have denied any consideration of waivers in the county. The board could also approve a waiver application. The board could also consider a waiver application pending the findings of the engagement with stakeholders, like survey results. And so one thing that would have to be determined with an approval only tonight, if the board wanted to approve a waiver application submission, would be we would have to determine a grade span again, or it could be determined on Tuesday, another time that we have a meeting when we have more information about stakeholders and their viewpoints. And then the target date, before we would apply for a waiver, we have to have a target date. So we could, and I can give you what staff would recommend for all of these, if that would be helpful. And then number three, blended learning. There are still some schools in Ventura County that may not open immediately when the county would be removed from the watch list. There are some districts who would be opening as soon as the 14-day period subsides. So just for an example, when you are off the wait list, so let's just say, for example, next Tuesday, we met the number of 7 in Ventura County. We could be removed from the watch list, the Ventura County, and we would have to wait for 14 days from that day. Okay, 14 calendar days, not weekdays, but calendar days before we could open. So staff we could have direction from the board that says that we will open 14 days from removal from the watch list. And that actually that's a requirement anyway. And we could have a target date. Now, the one caution is that we could be removed again from the watch list if our data spikes. So at that point, we would just sort of abort our procedures to open up. However, my recommendation for that one would be to allow the district to prepare to reopen all schools, TK through 12, and have a date right after that 14 days. The 14 days would be adequate for us to prepare and to have everything ready to open, and we would open right away. So those are some options, but I'm happy to, if you would like some recommendations, or we are of course open to that as well. But these are just some that I put out here to help organize your thoughts.
It seems like at a minimum, we need the survey of labor and parents and parental groups, if we have any, to gauge whether or not we have the true interest. We do have, we did have several passionate public comments tonight, but I think we could get a better gauge of the community and our labor groups through a survey that would determine the willingness to go back. If to go through an entire waiver process that ends up with a quarter of the amount of students and teachers that we had planned for wouldn't be effective at all. So my suggestion is that we at least send the survey first.
Sorry, Dr. Hayes, you're saying that the survey has to be submitted, or the results have to be submitted as a part of the waiver approval?
Yes, you have to submit evidence that you consulted with your key stakeholder groups, which they've identified it as parents and your labor groups. And if we have,
the results, right? It's the board's decision whether the waivers go forward.
Yes.
So we can consider it, but ultimately we make the final decision whether waivers happen or not. And then that goes, you and us, of course, and then we submit that to the county, and we show that we've made the effort to talk to our stakeholders.
Yes, we have to have evidence that we engage them in the process.
Okay. So we technically can make a motion, we can consider, and we can approve. Is that pretty much what your recommendation is to us?
Mm-hmm. Yes, I mean, my recommendation would be to direct staff, implement the survey as soon as possible, which, as I stated, could be done tomorrow by the end of the day, and then to present the findings of the survey to the board on September 15th. And then my recommendation would be at that time to allow staff to be able to talk about the impact of the results, because if you have less parents than you may anticipate, you may have 90% of the parents saying yes, but what if there is a surprise and you have less parents than you think? We could just report to you the impact that may have on our models, our blended learning model, and just for the board to consider. So my recommendation would be to have staff report back with survey results and the impact of the survey results of both the labor group and the parent groups, and then the board make the final decision next Tuesday. That would be my recommendation.
And we can also get that for the small cohorts for the specialized instruction also to.
Yes, we can include that result. Yes, absolutely. We can have a separate survey.
If we made that decision next Tuesday, they would still have the ability to start back on the 21st. That wouldn't delay them another week or anything like that. They'd still have that ability to begin on the 21st.
Yes, because I think they would. We would still, because either way, this week we would be proceeding to get all the information in order to have the application done. We could have the application submitted very soon after the 15th for the waiver, because we have most of the information now. We're just waiting for a couple pieces. And as far as the small cohorts, we would be notifying staff tomorrow and starting the process. So yes, I think we would be able to have that 21st target date.
Okay, so we could send out surveys to labor and parents for the TK to 6 waivers, and for the small cohorts and the specialized instruction, And then staff would report back to us on Tuesday so that we'd be able to, with the impact of how those surveys would impact the district, and we could decide then.
Yes, and just a clarification, we would not be surveying our parents of the small cohort specialized instruction. Well, they would be, but they're actually going to be getting phone calls because it's very few. We're talking 50 or 60 students. So actually they would be personally contacted and talked about their students' IEP plan and whether, how in-person learning versus distance learning would be impacted. But we would be including the teachers with our teacher survey. That's just a point of clarification.
Great. That's even better too.
I think it would be better that we move with item 1 and 3 and maybe continue item 2 with direction for next week, because it sounds like we have everything we need on item 1, and the sooner they can get started, the better. Item 3 is obvious, but it's 2 that we need a little more information on. So would you agree, Dr. Hayes? Can we, push forward 1 and 3 and then instruct, or direct staff to survey our stakeholders?
Yes, that would be another plan that would be that could be an effective approach as well. Yes.
And then we can come back and vote on it next week.
For number 2, yes, correct.
So you don't feel like we need to engage the specialized instruction parents this week and find out and get their feedback as to whether or not they'd be interested in coming back full-time, I mean, not full-time, but in person, and then vote on the entire 3 points next week? I mean, because I know that the question I asked was that whether or not if we waited until Tuesday to actually approve the small cohorts, that would it impact the start date for them?
Yeah, I probably, ideally, it would probably direction tonight, ideally for number 1 would probably be more beneficial, because we are going to open with small cohorts and specialized instruction. That is something that is expected of us as a school district without a waiver process. So even if we have only half of our students who want to participate, we still have students who cannot make progress towards their IEP goals and the at-home setting. So we are compelled to offer in-person services, specialized services, regardless whether it's 2 students in a class or 11. So either way, that's sort of a difference between that and the waiver.
It doesn't change if the amount of students that take advantage of the in-person learning, if that doesn't affect how we reopen for them, then we could approve that tonight if somebody wants to make a motion, for sure.
So I'd like to make a motion that we approve the small cohort specialized instructions for a September 21st target date. With that, a motion that we direct staff to survey our stakeholders, the unions and our parents, and a motion that we approve the blended learning model once we get the approval to reopen the schools after we're removed from the watch list. Aurelia, you can reformat that for me, but that's my motion.
Mr. President, just a point of order. For clarity, I think it might be better just to take that as maybe make it just 3 separate motions, or to break it into 2 motions.
Well, we can, but there's one motion on the agenda, so that's why I just made it into one motion. But if you want to, I guess, what do you suggest, Dr. Hayes?
We could, whatever the board desires for clarity is fine. If we think it'd be more clear to have 3 different motions, that's absolutely fine. We can make a longer, more cumbersome 3-part motion as well. It really is up to the board, honestly.
Mr. DeTore, are you saying just because maybe you want to vote or not vote on one or something?
Well,
No, it was just for clarity.
yeah,
Okay.
the motion's on the floor. So if we have someone that wants to, make an addendum, and then Mr. Perez can either keep or withdraw his motions up to, we can format this into something that I think everybody can understand, which is the approval of the September 21st, 2020 target date for small cohorts and specialized instruction, that we would like to approve that. We'd like to survey the laboring parents as to the interest in applying for a TK to 6 waiver. And we would also like to approve the reopening of schools to the in-person, which is the blended model, is my understanding, once we're removed from the state's watch list and the 14 days, and we're off for the 14 days. Does that sound like what we're after?
Yes.
You're saying make those 3 different motions?
No, it was one. It's Robert's motion. I'm just kind of reformatting it to so that I think that we all understand what we're trying to do.
I think, I know just for me personally, I'd rather see 3 different smaller motions. I think number 2 needs to be discussed a little bit more. So I don't want to hold.
Let me remove my motion, and I will I will go back and like to make a motion that we approve. I guess this is slide whatever page it is, where it reads 1 small cohort specialized instruction, that we approve September 21st as the target date to begin those cohorts. And then I want to approve the blended learning model, which let's go back and approve that one. I made a motion for number 1.
Great. Okay, so Mr. Perez, you're withdrawing your original motion,
Yes.
and you're making a new motion that we approve the September 21st, 2020 target date to begin in-person small cohort specialized instruction. Do I have a second?
I'll second that motion.
Okay, motion from Robert Perez, seconded by Scott DeTore. All those, is there any discussion on the motion? Okay, then all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, opposed? All right, ayes have it. The motion passes 5-0. Now, do we have another motion on item number 2?
I'd like to have some discussion on it before we do a motion, if that's okay with the group.
Yes.
Yeah, sure, we can have some.
So I have like just a question for Dr. Hayes, and if not for you, one of your staff members. So TK through 6, first we have to determine a grade span. I mean, can we even do 6th graders at our middle schools? That doesn't seem likely as of this time. So we're looking at TK through 5 for elementary schools. Would that be correct?
Yes, that would be correct. I mean, unless the board, wanted staff to really try to do 6th grade, but I will tell you, we have a lot of teachers who teach 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. We rarely have just 6th grade teachers, so it would be difficult because we'd have some teachers working part-time and coming in. Well, they'd be full-time, but they'd be part-time with kids, part-time without kids. So staff would recommend TK through 5, correct?
Okay.
From my understanding, though, you said we would discuss that if we went to go approve this motion, right? Isn't that what we were going to do if the motion was approved?
Well, we can have that discussion right now.
Correct. Yes, we can keep, yes, we need to continue to discuss it before we arrive to a motion, correct?
I'm sorry, Jeff, go ahead.
No, go ahead. I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was just saying that my understanding is that logistically, because we have Chaparral and Mesa Verde, that we would by only having 6th grade, logistically and possibly even financially, it would be difficult for the district to accommodate only 6th graders at those middle schools, but that the K through 5 would is easier, kind of more natural, because our elementary schools, with the exception of Campus Canyon anyway, is typically K through 5.
Right.
Yes, that's correct. And Campus Canyon, grades 6th, 7th, and 8th, it is a middle school model, if you will. So in other words, we don't just have 6th grade teachers, we have teachers teaching all 3 grade levels. So again, it would be more efficient, if you will, to keep it at TK through 5. That's staff's opinion, correct?
Okay. Jeff, do you have anything else to add?
And it sounds like, Dr. Hayes, that, no matter which direction we're going to be, we have to, it sounds like part of the waiver application is engaging with stakeholders. It's not necessary. So whether we say go now or go in, 3 weeks from now, we still have to go through those hurdles.
Correct.
And then we can get those findings hopefully as early as next week, but that may not be the case. And then determining a target start date. You think, we might be on the same timeline as the small cohort specialized instruction, possibly in there. It sounds like what the turnaround time is right now. Is that more or less correct?
I think that's a possibility. Yes, I think that definitely is a possibility. I think I'm pretty certain we can have a quick turnaround with the survey in terms of our parents. We will set a beginning and end date that's very clear to our parents and encourage as many parents to participate as possible. The affected parents, obviously, the parents who have students in whatever grade span the board decides to target for the waiver. So yes, but either way, we would have to do it anyway and show the results. So theoretically, we couldn't apply, tomorrow for a waiver. Anyway, the earliest we could apply would probably be early next week. So we can get everything in order and be prepared to act and submit a waiver if the board wants us to proceed that way.
And once we do submit a waiver, if we do submit a waiver, isn't it 14 days before that?
Yes.
So that
Correct.
actually wouldn't really meet that 21st, just making sure everyone is aware, if we're talking about it on the 15th, you're not looking at the same for the 21st for the TK through 6. It would be a little later.
Yeah, well, you are able to submit an application in phases, so we could actually determine a date and then give subsequent information. So we actually theoretically, I verified that we could theoretically probably have the 21st, but we'll have to talk about that. But yes, theoretically, that's a possibility. We can have more information on Tuesday if we feel like it would be better to move it out one more week to the 28th.
And then we can have a discussion about approving the waiver application submission tonight. That lets you and your staff go forward with getting that input that you need. And then if for some reason on Tuesday, you find that our community, both our teachers, our classified and our parents are not ready, we can always rescind the motion and rescind the application. Would that be correct?
That's absolutely correct. Yes.
Not going to be
That's
submitted until you get all the information that you need, right?
Yes, and that would, we could proceed and use this week to get everything as much as in order as we can to present that and be ready on Tuesday, pending board, pending the results just to make sure that the board wants to proceed with, depending on what the results are of the stakeholders. But that's correct. You could rescind it though, absolutely, before we submit it, because technically that it's not considered complete until we have results of engaging the stakeholders. You can't just say you're going to engage them. You have to show and have results that, so we have to do the survey and compile the data. And Mr. Perez had a good point. It doesn't necessarily mean you have to have consensus, but it does mean you have to survey, because I think but the county, and I don't know how much of a factor they include that. So if they see that your labor, for example, is firmly against it, I don't know if that will impact their approval. They have not really communicated that effect yet. So that's something that we're waiting to see.
Yeah, I appreciate all that. Just for the board, for discussion purposes, would we be, I don't want to call for a motion right now, but just to have just a discussion about it. I mean, I'm thinking just the bureaucracy and other things, and having to come back next week and go back through a lot of this information to kind of delay that start process. Would we be better off directing staff to say, we want to go ahead and start this process, and then it might take them a week or a week and a half to get the stuff they need in order to submit? Do we want to just trying to get out of the way of bureaucracy a little bit? And
Right.
I'm in total favor of a waiver. I mean, I think if that's the way the board wants to go tonight with obviously if we have to rescind it next week, we can do that. I mean, I'm okay. I mean, that's pretty much where I'm headed.
Mr. President, I'd like to make a motion.
Well, just before you do,
Sure.
one
I
second.
want some discussion on this before a motion's called.
Yeah,
Go.
just to Jeff's point, I appreciate you wanting, I mean, obviously this is a bureaucratic nightmare, and
Right.
move things along is certainly I appreciate. I don't know if it seems to me anyway that if we engaged the labor and parental groups, although we don't need their consensus or their approval for it, but it is required in order to apply for the waiver. And I don't know if, and this would be, Dr. Hayes would be able to let us know, if we would be able to make an educated decision on this without having all of the feedback through either staff and labor and parents as to how many people we have that are interested and what that is going to look like. And I didn't know if it would be better to get the surveys, talk to staff, and come up with a plan that we could approve of with all the information in hand on Tuesday, as opposed to approving it now and then having to possibly rescind it on Tuesday. If you're already, if we tell you, hey, could you go ahead and start getting everything together you need for the application, is it going to delay the submission of the waiver? Even though we need to show evidence of parental engagement, which we wouldn't have until next Monday at the earliest, is my understanding. Are we able to supply this? Are we able to submit this waiver without proof of parental engagement? Doesn't sound like we are. So the difference between approving this, that we want the waiver to be submitted prior to Tuesday, doesn't sound like it really slows the waiver process down that much, because we haven't met all the criteria needed to submit the waiver in the first place. And to me anyway, it feels like we don't have complete, we don't have all of the information that we may need to make that final decision. I would hate to do that and then rescind it on Tuesday because of some of the information that your staff has come back with that may change that. I don't know. Just for discussion, it's up to.
Great questions and great point, Nathan. Thank you.
I don't know. What do other people think about that? I could be way off.
No, in fact, that's the motion. I think there's a way to put that into a motion. And if I may, I'd like to make a motion, and then if you don't agree with it, no one please second it and we can move on.
Okay,
But
then
this
go ahead,
is
Scott.
the motion would be to direct staff to initiate the process, not submit, initiate the process for a TK through 5 waiver, and then report back to the board next Tuesday, with their findings.
Okay. The motion is to direct staff to initiate the process for the TK to 5 waiver, including the survey of labor and parental parents, and then report back with their findings on Tuesday. Do we have more discussion on that particular motion?
I have a question for Dr. Hayes. I just want to know if you think that that is reasonable and you can get that done within the week.
Well, we can certainly try to get as much. We have a lot of the information. We do have a lot of the information completed already. If you go through the waiver requirement submission list, the two biggest challenges for staff will be to detail the testing protocols and to engage staff. And actually that one is not as difficult. It's just that just takes a couple days. That's just a little time consuming. But I was looking on my calendar, and if we were able to gather, organize all the information and report back to the board on the 15th, we could and have the application submitted the 16th, for example, or possibly the 17th, but the 16th, then we could open up, right around September 30th, the 29th or 30th, or even have a target date of October 1st if we wanted to have a start of a clean month. That would be the 14 days. And we also have to consider that we may be removed from the watch list on Tuesday as well. And then all bets are off. Then we just prepare to open and we don't have to submit a waiver after all. So that is another option. That is what we have all been hoping for, honestly, so that all of our schools can reopen for all of our students. But that would be, I think that would be reasonable. And then on the 15th, we will certainly communicate, if we are having any remaining challenges to submit the waiver. But from what all the requirements I've seen, as I said, those are the two outstanding ones that we would be working on this week.
Okay, so with, Ute, did you have anything else on that? Okay, then by waiting until we show proof of engagement of the parents and labor, we're not, by waiting until Tuesday to give this the official approval of submitting a waiver, we're not delaying that application because we don't have any proof, because we have not engaged labor or parental or parents, right? Is that my understanding?
Yeah, I mean, it would be, yes. I mean, we would not be able to complete that task until, like I said, to accumulate the data, probably till Monday. So yeah. Tuesday would be, so you might argue a 1 day delay, possibly,
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So by not making a motion to approve a waiver today, we're not dragging our feet because we still need to have that engagement from our stakeholders. That's a requirement. So next Tuesday, we should have that information and then we can make a decision with no stipulations. We're waiting for something, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Which is what Scott's motion is. I'm sorry.
Right, that's the key point of my motion, is it's to initiate, not to approve. So that, like you said, it keeps us from having to rescind a motion or a vote. And it gives staff, I'm hoping it gives staff the time. That's why I want to say, use the word initiate, not submit.
And we'll set the wheels in motion so that we're ready to make an informed decision on Tuesday. Jeff, you were saying something?
No, I was just said, that was great. With that, if there's no other discussion, I would like to second the motion in front of us.
That was good. I'm glad it's clear to me now. So that's good. I'm glad we did that.
Thank you.
All right. The motion is to direct staff to initiate the process of the TK to 5 waiver and report back to engage the labor and parents, labor groups and parents, and report back with the information on Tuesday with the hopes of submitting. If we have all the information we need and approval on Tuesday, we could even submit this by next week. So motion by Scott Dettori, seconded by Jeff Donavedian. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, ayes have it, 5-0. Now for the final item number 3, the blended learning model. Do we have a motion or do we want discussion on that also?
I'll make a motion that we approve the blended learning model.
Second.
Okay, a motion from Robert Perez, second by Jeff Donavedian. Do we have discussion on that motion?
Just a big thank you to Dr. Hayes and her team and the board. I know this is a very tough issue that we're all dealing with. So just thank you for giving us information to help us try to do the best we can.
And the information changes day by day. So
Yes.
thank you.
That's for
You're very
That's for
welcome.
sure.
And just to be clear on that last motion, so it would be approving that. So when we are removed from the watch list, it would be to allow staff to prepare to open and open as soon as that 14-day requirement is met. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. So
Any other discussion on the motion? Okay, so the motion is to approve that reopening of all schools to the in-person or blended model when Ventura County is removed from the state's watch list and the 14 days thereafter. That allows us to go back to that blended model. And the motion was made by Robert Perez, second by Jeff Donavedian. All those Did I get that right, Robert?
Yes.
Before I, okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, opposed? Okay, ayes have it, 5-0. Okay, then if there's nothing else, the date and time of the next regular meeting of the Board of Education of the Moore Park Unified School District will be held on Tuesday, September 15th, 2020 at 5:30 PM in the district office boardroom or remotely, as we have been doing, 5297 Maureen Lane. Please note that the meeting date and time are subject to change pending updates to the governor's executive orders and to the Ventura County Public Health stay-at-home order. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I move to adjourn.
Second.
On a motion by Ute Van Dam, second by Robert Perez. It's 6:08. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it, 5-0. Thank you very much. Good night.
Okay.
Good night, Moore Park.